to the fun part here about VAR. And so you've worked, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've worked as VAR, or at least as the assistant, right?
So I was in the original group that was allowed by FIFA,
Mm-hmm.
for this country to prototype VAR.
Okay.
So I've been trained in VAR, through MLS and Pro and FIFA, and I did in the last few years of my career, I was actually VAR in MLS, and then I also refereed with the VAR.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty well versed in the VAR world,
Okay.
and
Nice.
it's I guess we're going to talk about it now.
Yeah. Well, so like again, I don't have your experience. I can only talk about from the outside looking in. So I would love to get your perspective first as the referee, and VAR signals for you, I guess, through the microphone or the headset. Hey, whatever it is, potential red card, however the correct terminology is, but potential red card from a yellow upgrade to a red. How does that, like? Can you kind of give a scenario how that works? And like you're listening to it, you obviously saw it live. You didn't think it was a yellow. It wasn't a red card. You gave a yellow. So what is the process as the center, and you're dealing with that? How does that actually work?
Yeah, I think that's a lack of awareness and a misconception. There's only a few instances that VAR can get involved in, right?
Mm,
There's actually only four
right.
that they can get involved in, and PK, no PK, red card,
Sure.
misidentification of a player, offside leading up to a goal. There's only a few moments that they can get involved. What people don't understand is that if the VAR calls you, they're not calling you for a question. They're calling you for an answer or a
Right.
solution. So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, if there's a PK, no PK, and the VAR sends the referee to the monitor, it's because he's telling you that the call is wrong, that you
Mm,
decided to do, and you're trying to reverse it. He's not
right.
going to call you to the VAR and say, I think, or hey, want to take another look. He's basically leading the referee to change that decision,
Gotcha.
right? So that's the first part of VAR,
Right.
one of the first ideals of VAR. And the referee always makes the final decision.
Mm,
So even though the VAR says to me this is the penalty kick, the referee has that final decision. When you go to the monitor, they're going to show you two instances: the point of contact, right, of where it happened. Let's say if it was a
mm-hmm.
red card or if it's a penalty kick, the point of contact, and then they're going to talk a little bit about playing it in real time, so you can actually have see it one more time.
Right.
But at the end of it, the referee has to make that decision. But as a referee, if the VAR is telling you something, they've seen it from multiple angles, sitting down in a booth, and the majority of the referees are already predisposed to reverse that decision
It's
because
process.
it's process. Because you would kind of be you're taking a risk as a referee if you don't go with the VAR because he's telling
Mm,
you this is what it is,
right.
right? Because he's seen it. Now, when you're in that booth, it's one of the most difficult things that you're ever going to do in your life. And the reason is when you're on the field, you make a mistake, people accept it. You're human. But when you're in a booth with 15 cameras, depending the level,
Right.
and consider the angle. One camera on one side can tell you one answer, and then a camera on the other side can tell you the complete opposite answer.
Mm,
And you have to judge as the VAR which one is more correct. It's not an easy thing, and you only have a certain time limit,
right.
right? And you have a room. It's actually people don't know this. There's an actual red button, like the Batmo phone or Batmobile button, and
Yeah.
you press that button, and the whole room lights up, and that
Mm.
means that you're checking a play, right? And from that moment, you have a person next to you throwing cameras, angles that you're asking for. You
He's the
have to know
operator.
the operator. You have to know what camera is going to tell you what before the match, so you have an idea of that. You have an assistant VAR that's telling you, okay, the game's continuing on, or it's going to restart. You need to tell the referee to wait or not. So you have to tell them, okay, play it at real speed, play it at 50%. So it's one of the hardest things people don't realize that you're ever going to do. Um, at times, I didn't like it because I rather referee, and to me, that's natural. This is something that feels a little bit unnatural.
Mm. Well, it's interesting because like I haven't watched all the professional matches with VAR, but the games that I have watched, I've only ever seen one time that the referee has gone to the booth, and I think you highlighted earlier that they're probably going to agree. and they say, "Hey, I don't agree with the VAR decision," they walk off not calling it or agreeing with the decision to change the outcome. And like I would ask this question because I was waiting for the moment to do so. This is my personal opinion. I would love to get your thoughts on this. If the VAR is going to say, "Hey, this should be reviewed," and you already said it, he's telling you you need to look at this because it needs to be changed, and however he phrases that or she phrases it is one way. I've always thought like if because they're all certified referees at a very very high level. Obviously, they get the benefit of watching the video and slow and regular motion. I always felt like, hey, just if we think it should be changed, change it. We don't even need to go to the booth. Let's just move on with our day. And I would think that would speed up the game. There might be still some contention points, but I've just felt like you're really delaying the flow of the game by having the guy walk over to the booth. Like I remember when we had the what do you call it? Arsenal versus Newcastle, and there were three VAR calls in one play. Now they all didn't take effect. That was a little bit different, but like if you need the referee to go to the booth, then that means the decision should be changed. So why can't we just say, "Hey ref, decision change. It's offside or it's whatever, and let's move on." Offside's not a good example because that's already done instantly. But anything else, instantaneous. We don't need to go to the booth. Let's move on with our day. Why is that not capable, or is that process not implementable?
I think FIFA opened up Pandora's box
Mm.
because if it was just calls that were black and white, like
Yeah,
offside, like goal, no goal, like ball out of bounds before a goal, and it shouldn't be a goal.
yeah,
I think that would have been the easier way, but they didn't. I think they opened up Pandora's box where now you can review judgment calls.
mm.
And when you review judgment calls, and the referee has the final decision, the VAR can't really change it, right?
Gotcha.
Because it's a judgment call. And even though the referee didn't have the best angle, it's still, he's a professional referee. He should be at the right place at the right
Right.
time. So I think, open up it to judgment calls, I think is why you're seeing so many disasters because from one person to the next, it's completely different.
Mm.
And because there's different experience levels. And that's something that factors in as well. If I'm a new referee in Major League Soccer, let's just say, or in the EPL, and
Mm-hmm.
in the VAR, I have a 400 veteran game referee that's in the VAR. It doesn't matter what he sends me down, I'm going with it, even though
Right.
I think it's
Okay.
even though I think it's incorrect, right? So there's so many. That's just one factor. There's
Right.
so many factors that go along a decision that is outside the decision, and that's the problem that you see, right? And to me, like I think the black and white calls should have been it.
Mm.
And you see it kind of in other sports where that's really what they focus on. It's not really judgment calls, right?
Right.
I think that would have been something that would have made more sense. People would still get upset about PK no PK. People would still get upset about red card no red card on a violent conduct, but you wouldn't have so much controversy that you have now.
Well, and again, the game is stopping. Like you're taking away, like you said, the natural flow of the game. It's now becoming artificial, and it's. And I should say I've been noticing that there's a lot more errors that have been happening. And do you think the errors happen because they don't have enough time to check? Is it they don't get the right viewpoint? Where do all these errors are happening? Like, and then we can talk about specific ones individually in a second. But I want to get your opinion, like from the error standpoint of the subjective calls that the referee has to go to the monitor for, as an example, or whatever it is. Why are we getting more errors now than before? Is it time? Is it accuracy? What are we missing?
I think in respects to the VAR, when you slow things down, things get magnified and they look worse. And I think VARs know that. They know that it's something that's taught, is that when you focus on something, you're gonna see it. And when you see a camera, you're gonna focus 10 times zooming into the point of contact,
Right?
and then you're gonna slow motion that contact. It's gonna look like it's the guy deserves jail time, right? And
Triple red card. Yeah.
and it becomes like, oh, but it's not real. It's not real. It's
Mm.
magnified of what you want it to be. And at
Right.
the end, if you're checking something, you're kind of predisposed in a lot of ways that that's what it was. Because
Mm.
immediately when you see something, you press that button, I'm checking, right? And from that moment, you're already kind of predisposed. So you're going to magnify what you think,
Mm.
right? So I think there's a lot of human error, and I think it's causing doubt within people. and it is changing our game because
Hmm.
now even referees are not really managing people anymore. There's a big decision that's made, and the first thing they do is they point to their ear,
Right?
and that's supposed to diffuse the player, which at many times it does. But are you really connecting with that person like it was in the past? And that's why you see a lot of games where it goes south, especially in the professional level for
Yeah.
the referees, because you're not really managing players anymore. You're just dependent on the VAR.
Well, I've noticed what you talked about where they go like this. You see it. Players will come rushing over and they're like, hey, they got it. So, but I do think what's interesting is you talked about the slowdown camera or like the angle when it's slowed down. Like I've always said that is a terrible thing to do because, to your point, it looks 3,000% worse than real time. So like, yeah, almost every time that I've seen a slowed down decision, I'm like, yeah, that's a red card or that should be that. But then when you watch it at real speed, you're like, I think that's just part of the game. Like there's just times where there's nothing. Like I remember watching one. Um, I didn't write it down in my notes, but I remember it right now. It was Rashford in the Champions League got a red card. I think it was against Copenhagen, and he went to play the ball. He looked like to me a complete accident of him stepping on the guy's foot. I don't think anything was called. United ended up getting a shot off on the other side. VAR came back and said, "Hey, this needs to be a red card decision." Referee went to the monitor, red card, and I'm like, of course, if you look at it in extremely slow motion, of course it's going to look like a red card. But when you're watching it in real time, I'm like, he's just battling for the ball. He doesn't even know where the guy's foot is. He's trying to shield, protect, use his body, get the ball, and get it out of the situation. So I just find that interesting that you're on the same point with me with the slowdown effects because I'm like, yeah, no shit, it looks terrible. It's magnified, and you're highlighting the issue. And of course, you're going to be like, okay, that's a red card or whatever the issue is. It's crazy to me. And I think that should be, if we're going to keep it with the subjective calls, scrap the slowdown. Let it be full speed. Whatever angle you want to use, fine, because like you said, we've opened Pandora's box. But let it be full speed so we can at least get the grip of what actually happened that the referee saw, not this slowdown effect.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. When I was working in the league, obviously I would get back to the hotel and I wanted to rewatch the game
Mm,
and to reflect and try to get better for the next time. So there was calls that in the field everybody accepted it, like you're talking about. Let's say a hard challenge, but whatever, it was a yellow card and everybody accepted it. Nobody got like, hey, injured or it was something where it was a complete mistake.
sure.
But then you go back and I would watch it, and with 5-6 replay, I'm like, oh man, because you get assessed on those matches. There's
Right.
there's coaches similar to player coaches that coach matches towards the referee in those matches.
Mm.
So they're gonna think it's a red card. I'm gonna get dinged for this one,
Right.
and but everybody accepted it on the game, and after the game, everybody would come and say, great job, or shake your hand,
Good
and
match.
everybody's fine with it because it's accepted. And then
Mm.
you take other factors in account, the temperature of the match at that moment, the how you have the game under control, and you say, you know what, maybe on film this could be a red card, but since I have full control and everybody's accepting it, I can go with the yellow and everybody plays fine. And that's the objective, is to have it safe, right? For them not to do it again. But when you go to a monitor, when you repeat it and replay it 100 times to get the right answer, it might be the right answer on video, but it might be the wrong answer on the field. And I think that's the discrepancy between VAR and live. I refereed my whole career up until the last 2 years without a VAR, and we were fine. We were fine. Yes,
Right.
were there mistakes? Yes. Were there huge mistakes? Maybe I had one or two in my career, right? But the problem is that people want perfection. The people that are in charge of this spend a lot of money. This is a business, right? For
Yep.
many people,
Right.
and there was the Henry handball that they put him into the World Cup,
Yeah.
and it leaves a whole other team out of the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So people want perfection, but you know to me soccer's beautiful just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to be perfect. It's
Right.
fine if there's mistakes. It's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we get so robotic, it's like it is now. It's changing our game, and it's not leading in the right direction.
Well, and I agree with that because it's interesting. Like humans, unless you have a robot out there, and they'll probably still make mistakes at some point, but a human will always make a mistake. You can't change that. But I think that's part of what you said. It makes the game beautiful. Does it suck? It absolutely sucks. But like at least you know that the referee did his best and he doesn't have to go like this to understand that the check is coming. but I want to like look at some individual mistakes and kind of get your take. I'm sure you've seen them, and I'm sure you've had discussions with your friends about them. I really want to start with the VAR mistake with the Liverpool and Tottenham one, where the goal was called back for offside, and then they couldn't go back and change it. So I guess can you kind of walk through like you've been in the VAR situation, you've worked as VAR, you've worked as the referee on the field. You know, I don't even know where to start with the question, but like, can you kind of walk me through? I mean, you probably saw the recording and the playback, but like, when you see that happening, what would be your opinion on how that whole thing played out?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't see that clip, but
I
I will talk about when a goal is scored because there's judgment in that as well. So the VAR has to decide when the attacking play starts.
mm,
That's the first instinct after a goal. So, for instance, that can be 5 seconds, that can be 20 seconds, that can be on the other side of the field. But the
right.
VAR has to decide when the attacking possession starts. From that moment, you can check everything leading up to the goal.
Okay.
So, for instance, it changes. If it's 20 seconds behind, there could be two potential fouls that you can check.
Right.
But if it's 5 seconds, you wouldn't check those two potential fouls before. So that first part of when the VAR deems it to be an attacking possession,
Mm,
that's where the check starts. So in that, you can check for offside, you can check for fouls, you can check for
right.
ball in and out of bounds. You can check for almost everything that the referee can check from the moment of that attacking phase, right? So that's one judgment call that is going to be different for each person. Because
Right.
for me, an attacking phase is when you're in the attacking side of the field. For some VARs, that'll be from the time that they won possession, which could be the goalkeeper on the other side.
Sure.
So on that aspect, there's judgment there. Then everything leading up to that, it can be checked. Now, if the assistant referee raises their flag, right, before the ball goes in the net, and the referee blows the whistle before the ball goes in the net, you can't review it anymore because they've already
Okay.
made the
Wait.
call
I want to make sure I
before
understand
the.
what you said. Can you say that part again? I'm sorry.
So let's say there's an offside,
Yep.
right? And there was a goal right after the offside.
Mm-hmm.
But the AR put the flag up and the referee
Mm,
blew the whistle before the ball went in the net.
mm,
Now, offsides are not reviewable. Only things that lead up to the goal are. So
right.
if the referee stops the play at the offside and the goal subsequently goes in the ball goes in the net and he blew the whistle before that ball went in the net, then nothing's reviewable. That offside is whatever they decided to be. So that's why you see a lot of the ARs keep their flag down.
The delay.
The delay because they're seeing if the ball goes in the net, they still have an opportunity to get it right.
It
And
can be
then,
checked.
yeah, and then even if it doesn't go in the net, then they'll put the flag up because it was offside originally. And that's why you see the delay factor, right? Which I don't like the delay factor because in that delay factor, there can be a play that somebody gets injured, knowing that it was already offside, right? But
Yeah.
to me, that delay factor takes away from the game because now the player had to run an extra 30 yards. And at the end of the game, he didn't have enough gas to be able to make that 30-yard run. So to me, it implicates in the game and what you're talking about VAR becoming changing our game. And
Artificial.
I believe that everything it's a nuisance because players get upset, they get frustrated. You should have called that from the beginning, but what's taught is that let the ball go in the net, right? And then from that moment, let VAR take care of it.
Hmm.
Well, then
So
what's
unless
the
you're
point?
100% sure that it was offside, you have to delay. That's what you're saying, basically.
Even if you're 100% sure, and
Really?
there can be an immediate goal, you keep the flag down.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Kyle,
That's crazy.
Kyle, you tell me if
Oy,
that makes sense at all.
it does make zero sense. Well, that's why now I'm understanding why we're having all these issues because they're literally, you made the comment about this. They're being told, let's go to this every single time. So no wonder why we're having significantly more issues with VAR because you already highlighted it. Let me ask you this question, I guess, before I jump into it because I don't know what the answer is. What is the average time frame VAR should have to make an adjustment or like to not make an adjustment, but review an actual play?
Uh, it cannot be reviewed. It's being reviewed, but it cannot be changed if it's been restarted.
No, so my
So
question is like timeline. So like let's say it needs to go to VAR for a check.
Right.
Have you guys been instructed, hey, it can't be more than 3 minutes? It's got to be in and out in three, or in and out in 30 seconds? Or is there any time limit? Is there no time limit? Is it
There's no time limit. It's
okay?
more on their VARs are instructed to take mind of the game and not taking away from the game, right? And which is
Mm,
what you're talking about, the flow. But you cannot change a call if it's been restarted. So, for
right,
instance, let's say the ball goes out of bounds and it's throw in. You have to tell the referee that the play is being checked before that throwing goes in. If that throwing goes in, you cannot check it anymore.
right,
So there is kind of a timestamp on it before the next phase of play. If the
right,
play never stopped, like let's say it was a PK no PK and it never stopped, you have all up to the time that the ball goes out of play again. So that could be a minute,
sure,
right? Or you have seconds and tell the referee, wait, hold on, because I need to check it. So there's
right,
different scenarios of time limits. But at the end, it's not supposed to take away from the game. But at the end, it does because if you're checking at the end in extra time, in additional time, you're playing 9, 10 minutes in games. That's
right.
crazy.
I remember the
That's
World Cup had that.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. And the VARs the referees are instructed to play every moment.
Oop, I lost you, man. Say that last part again. You said they have to play every moment, and then you cut out.
Yeah, they have to play every moment
Okay.
that is taken away from the game. But there's some games where it's 3-1 and the game's
Yeah.
over and you have to play 12 minutes, or 4-1, the game's over. You have
Sorry
to
to hear
play 12 minutes. And that's where all the problems happen when everybody's desperate. You want to
that.
get
Mm.
out of there, you know?
Right, right, right. No, I get it. But and I find that interesting because, like, I don't know if you actually saw the thing that happened with Liverpool and Tottenham where VAR made the mistake and it was supposed to be a goal, but they called offside, and then the play continued, so they couldn't bring it back. And I'm going, I understand the ruling of it because I've repped. I know once you made the call, you can't go back. Once the play, or I should say, once the play's restarted, you can't go back. I've always known that.
Right.
But I'm like, there's never, at least I've never seen an error at that level, or I shouldn't say that level, that magnitude. And I'm like, there should almost be like a human judgment. Like, hey, it's okay, guys. We made the mistake. We got to go back. So I understand the point that they can't. I mean, obviously, I can sit here and say what I would have done as the referee. But do you think that the referee knew the mistake, or they kept that until the end of the game and they didn't tell him?
Referees will always know the, that they have doubt. There's always doubt. And even when you
Mm,
make a call, you don't know if it's 100% correct, especially on the game changing calls. We call them match critical incidents. On those match critical
mm,
incidents, you want to take your time. You don't want to rush and let the play restart, and then you're not able to fix if it was an error. So that's up to the referee's experience and judgment at the
mm.
moment. If I think I'm not 100% sure, or I didn't have the best angle, the referee can
Yeah.
also go to the VAR on his own. He doesn't need to be recommended to the VAR. So
Ah,
and that's something that people don't know either. Like for instance,
didn't know
there's
that.
end of the game, right? There's PK no PK, and the VAR is checking, and they're about to restart. I'm not letting that ball restart because I'm gonna let the VAR, be able to see it. And if I think, you know what, this is gonna calm down the game, I'm just going to the VAR on my own, and they're allowed to do
Got
that.
it.
But some
Right.
don't exercise that right because they're
Mm.
like, I want to be right. But at sometimes it's not about being right and wrong. It's about making the right decision.
So it's ego.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's ego. Okay, that's interesting because, like, do you think that mistake with the Liverpool Tottenham game where Liverpool should have been awarded a goal and the VAR made the mistake and then they couldn't go back and fix it after the ball was restarted? Do you think they're going to make a change in the ruling that would allow, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds after the ball's been replayed that they can go back and correct the mistake? Because that was crazy to me that you could, I mean, one, that they made the mistake, but two, that they couldn't go back and fix the error because, like, I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say, if I was the ref in that situation and I knew that VAR made that mistake, I'm going back and I'm fixing that because that's at that level, it's unacceptable. So, do you think that will be a rule change that happens with the what is it called, the IFAB?
It's IFAB. It's IFAB.
IFAB.
Is
Yeah,
yeah, and that's who makes the rules and work in conjunction with FIFA. But I don't think there'll be a change. I think it's something that you can't swing the pendulum too much to the left and too much to the right, no matter what
got it.
happens. If
Yeah.
there's 5, 6, 7 situations that it happens, then maybe
Mm-hmm.
you have to look for a resolution. But to me, mistakes are going to be made. I think that rule helps exactly what you're talking about, the flow of the game. If you don't have a concrete without a doubt mistake, just let the game continue on.
Right.
And that's what that actual, not being able to change anything after the play has restarted. That's where that is in line with, is that if it wasn't so obvious, it should have jumped out at you at that moment,
Hmm.
right? And that's a human error that was made. I didn't see the clip, but I'm guessing that it was a human error, and you have to live with that.
It's crazy, man. Now, can you explain to me, because I saw this with a VAR call, and it was subjective offside. It was a Manchester United game, and they were playing, I think, Fulham, and the VAR went to do the check because all goals are checked. And at the end, the referee had to go to the monitor, and then the wording that came up literally said subjective offside. Can you expand and explain what that actually means? Because I was sitting there going, that doesn't sound super clear to me. And I've been in the game for a long time. So if you could help kind of relate what that means and how does that impact the rulings?
Yeah, so there's everybody knows the offside of the second last defender,
Mm-hmm.
where you're in front of the second last defender, and that's easy and it's obvious because they put the line, and
Right.
everybody knows that that's offside.
They
That's
draw it.
not that's not subjective, right? The subjective offside comes in the other part of offside where you're involved in active play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the subjectivity. Active play can mean, if you're a professional player, a small space, because you are skilled enough to play within that area. When it's a younger player, it's a bigger area. So
Mm-hmm.
for instance, being involved with play can be if you make contact. Let's say you're in offside position and you made contact with the defender, which caused you to be in active play, even though you were nowhere near the ball.
Mm.
So that's where the subjectivity comes. Where was that person in active play
Right.
by what they did? Either they made contact with the player, the defender, right? Or they were close enough to for the defender to move around them, causing them to be in active play, even though they're never going to reach the ball.
Right.
And there's somebody from onside coming on. So that's where the subjectivity comes of offside. Not so much on the second last defender that everybody has knows. It's more on, are you an active player or not? And if that player that was offside is deemed to be an active play, then that
Mm-hmm.
becomes subjective.
Okay. So how do I ask you this question? This is going to be a funny one. So, because you talked about it earlier when you were on the field, like as the referee, and then like nobody reacted to anything, the play moved on, whatever, and then VAR comes back. Do you think there should be some sort of element where like you kind of pay attention to what the players are doing and how they react to something? Because if they're not reacting, then they probably agree with it. So, like again, using that same goal with the subjective offside I brought up, the defending team didn't react like, "Oh my God, he's offside," right? They just, okay, it's a goal. We made a mistake. We got to do better next time. Get back in the field. And then this call comes. So like I can't tell you if I thought it was offside or not. You just see basically the situation where the guy sticking the leg out to try and get it. It's close, but not really close. It doesn't really look like to me he has impact. But again, I'm looking at, they go celebrate the goal. I paid attention to the defenders. No reaction. They've accepted the goal. So when you get a situation like that, like my thought is, hey, sometimes you got to let the game just play because you don't even have the defending team arguing, hey, he's interfered. You see what I'm saying? Like, is that something that you think could happen, or that never is accounted for, and it's just we got to go to the rule, or what is your take?
Yeah, a few years ago after the World Cup, well, during the World Cup, they FIFA came out with, it's always been there. It's called the spirit of the game,
Hmm.
right? And the spirit of the law. It's always been there, but they came out with this term of football understanding. And when they came out with this term, it basically means, what does soccer or football, imagine it was a person, what do they expect? Or what do they want out of this outcome?
Hmm.
Right? And the referee needs to deem what people expect. The players, the coaches, the spectator, the one that doesn't know anything about soccer. What would be the fair thing that would happen in this whatever scenario it is? So referees are not being taught a football understanding. Not just, I call it referee geeking out, where
Hmm.
you see a rule and I'm gonna go call it.
Right.
And it happens, like it's minute, and it happens in the game, and I got you. You did it wrong.
Right.
That's what you want to get away from, is geeking out on the laws of the game. You want to have the experience of, say, okay, at the end of the game, I want everybody to have a good experience. And by doing so, you have to understand what coaches and players need, not just, and like I said it before, not just call what I want, because that might not go in the game. It might be a
Right.
different type of game where you can allow flow, you can allow a little bit of contact. So this football understanding concept will take 10 years, maybe more, for referees at every level to start taking grasp of it. It's not something that's really been teaching much. It's more of a higher level FIFA referee idea, and it's
Mm.
trickling down into the professional leagues of each country. And little by little, it'll be trickling down into the youth level and the amateur adult level. But I think referees need to start going to that. Is what do people think is fair? And it might be different for both teams. And at the end, you have to make a judgment call. But a lot of the times, people want things to be safe and people want things to be fair. And if you keep those two ideals, even if it's incorrect in law, as I'm a referee coach, I would still accept it as a referee coach because you did the right thing. At the end, everybody shook your hand. And that's important. It really is
Right.
important.
No, I agree with that. And that's why I asked the question because, and this is going to, that really leads into my next question here, or like point is, you made a comment that you guys get reviewed by the, I don't know what words you use, but like the directors. Like, if you're in the Premier League, you're a ref, you're going to have the PGMOL come after you. Not come after you, but I think you get the point. They're going to review it with you, the case by case situation of errors. So, like, when you were an MLS referee and you had to do those reviews, did you get knocked a lot of times, even though you tried to let the game flow? Or how does that really happen? How does that work? Because I don't know anything about it, so I would love to learn.
Yeah, every MLS game has a coach, right? It's an assessor really. It's a person that it's actually you have a score.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh,
You have a
cool.
score at the end of every game, and at the end of the season, especially in pro, and people from the PJMOL created pro, right?
Mm,
There, Peter Walton was a referee in the Premier League. He became an administrator, and they hired him here to create pro. So a lot of the things that happen in the PGMOL, pro does as well because it's
got
from the
it.
same Howard Webb. Before he's a director now of PHMOL, he was the director of pro, right? So
Got
I
it.
don't know a lot of people know that, but so it's very similar to what happens there. It happens here in the states, and so after every match, you're graded on the match critical incidents, right? The incidents that change the game, and your overall management of the game is basically what they're focused on, right? And you get a score, and at the end of the year, you have to have a certain average. If not, you're either going to be sent down to USL or you're going to be let go. So
Right.
there is a correlation from each game, and it culminates at the end for a score. And it's how it's supposed to be is that the best scores end up doing the playoff matches, which it
Got it.
generally is that way, right? And the one who had the best results, best remarks, and that's kind of how the scoring goes. But yeah, it's highly focused on the match critical incidents, so the things that change the game, and your overall management. It's not so
Mm.
much, and a little bit of fitness, but it's not so much of oh, you missed this call and you've already missed five in the game. It's more of did you manage the game correctly?
That's very interesting. So, what happens if, VAR, for example, has a horrendous call? Will they get dropped right then and there? And maybe you could do a lower match, or what happens?
Yeah, it'll be their score is like a failing score. And then obviously they assign within 2 to 3 weeks. So they might, if it's really, really bad, they might get relieved from their next assignment.
Mm.
Or, they'll might not get VAR in a few weeks, maybe a month. And then they'll give them slowly work them back in there. There is a follow up with them and training. Why'd you get it wrong? They actually meet. The referees meet together. Not the VAR, but the referees meet together, which most of the VARs,
Right.
every 2 weeks, and they review all the match critical incidents of the weeks prior. So everybody gets that teaching, not just that one referee.
That's interesting because can you highlight, because you talked about the failing score, so can you kind of break down what the score actually is and looks like? Is it like, is it 1 to 100 and then you got to get 70 or higher type of thing, or what is the scoring and how does it work?
Yeah, it's basically that. It's everybody falls around the 80%. But when you get a mistake, it's like a -3. If you have like if you started off like at a I think the failing was like 81. or 80% of a
Mm,
of a score, and they have a whole metrics of it. And if you got -3, even if you had a great game after that, probably not going to pass it. But let's say it's a great game, you're doing great, you already at an 84, let's just say, and then the last call was missed. It'll drop you down to 81. You'll barely pass, but your score's not that good. You want to get the
right.
best score because you want to have enough leeway in the case that you do miss a call, for it not to affect your overall percentage.
That's crazy. So it literally, like you said earlier, it's literally sink or swim.
Right.
And man, that's crazy. So like in a situation like with you personally, did you ever have scores where you didn't meet the criteria and you were in the failing grade, or you were always positive in terms of that aspect?
My overall score at the end of the years was always above standard. So I'd never had a year where I was below standard,
Hmm.
but I did have, and it all depends on the judgment of the assessor as well.
Right?
It's not-
It's
you have
subjective.
to be able to manage the person that's assessing your game as well. Hey, this guy likes a lot of cards. I mean, this is all factors that people are not aware about. This assessor likes cards. This assessor doesn't like you to give any cards. And
That's
sometimes
funny.
that's information in your head that's how you're going to go out into the game. You shouldn't be that way, but we're
Mm,
human. At the end of the day, we're human, and all
right?
of these things affect you. Your family life, how if you're injured but you don't want to tell anybody, so then you're doing the game and you're not in the right spot, and then you miss something. So there's so many factors that people don't realize. They just want perfection. It's impossible. It's
Well,
impossible to have
I was gonna
perfection.
add. I was gonna add to that point that you just made. It's like talk about pressure. Like if you have one bad game and you make one mistake, it sounds like not necessarily ruin your career, but it could potentially ruin your career. One and two, if you have one bad mistake, they're gonna say, "Hey, you're done for 2 weeks. We'll see you." I mean, obviously you'll still have the review and stuff, but then you don't get any more matches. So like that to me, like I mean, I'm not surprised by any of this, but I didn't know that per se. I always knew there was some sort of review, but I didn't know it was like that critical in terms of performance that you could get dropped like that. And it's like, hey, thanks. We'll see you in 2 weeks, or you won't have another game for or whatever it is. They'll still have the review, but you're off duty for 2 weeks. So you just have to do the training. Like that's crazy. But I can kind of understand because you said it. They want perfection. Nobody's gonna be perfect, so there should almost be like I don't know, more leeway with it. But then like I'm looking at now, listening to you and understanding this stuff. We have VAR. VAR's I don't know your opinion, but I definitely agree with you. I think VAR should stick to what VAR can, call black and white. If we had black and white, there would be, I mean, I can't say no issues because there was at least one, but there would be almost 99% sure no issues. So I just think, you mentioned it. We've opened this can of worms that who knows how far it's going to go. I don't think VAR is going to go away because you already mentioned it. It's money and it's a big process now. Like it's probably not going to go away for years. They'd have to figure out something new to come in. But I want to ask you the $1 million question. In your opinion, should VAR stay or should it go?
I think it needs to be redefined. And here in the US, VAR is something that's in every sport, and it's accepted by the culture. You
Mm,
go to other countries and VAR is not accepted by the culture. It's more of whatever happens in the game, the referee makes a judgment call, and that's what it is,
yeah,
and that's what's accepted in their culture. That's why the first pilot groups that did it, it was more of a cultural thing. Who actually would accept this? The U.S. already has it in every single sport that you could imagine. It's part
yeah,
of our
that's
everyday
correct.
life. At the end, in our culture, we just want it to be right. In other cultures, like in my culture, right, it's more of trying to get away with stuff, and that's gamesmanship, and
Sure.
that should be part of the sport, because if you're smart enough, and can get away with it, then why should you be, why should you be told that you can't do it, right? And if you can get, so to me, every culture is a little bit different, but I don't think it's going to go away. I think it should be redefined, but it's hard to bring back, like you said, that can of worms. It's already been out there. So, and also, things that affect VAR now, and then you hear that it changes, and then it screwed you at the time that it was part of the program.
Right.
people are going to be upset as well. So I think applying it at the right moments with the right people that have the right training, I think that's all that we can now hope for, because I think it's too late to take it out.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like I've gone to two games from an MLS perspective, and as a fan watching the game, just sitting in the stands watching or whatever, I'm like, I'm not a fan, bro, because it stops the flow of the game, and we're sitting there going, you don't really get updated. You don't really. I mean, you get the thing on the screen that says VAR, VAR checking, handball or penalty, and it's like, but if I'm a fan and I'm paying for the spectacle, I want to know what's going on. Like, I want to hear the information that the referees are talking about, whether it's right or wrong, whatever decision they make, fine. But like, we're all sitting there in silence, and we're like, I was sitting with my wife, and we're sitting there going, she's like, "Do you know what's going on?" I'm like, "All I know is I can see what's on the screen." The same. She's like, "I want to know." Like, I would like to know too, but we're not going to know. We're not going to know until months later. And I think that's an issue because you got fans that want to be, they pay to be a part of the game. They want to be a part of the experience. That's why they're there. And it's almost like VAR is taking that away from them. Sure, now you get the clips, for example, from the Premier League. Weeks later, you get some clips, but like you don't really get to understand what's going on in that moment, especially when you have like longer VAR delays. And I just think that takes away from the experience of being a fan. I don't go to a lot of games personally, like in person, but like I did not enjoy that experience of actually having VAR for whatever it was, 1 minute or 2 minutes, delaying my game. I'm there because I want to watch the game of football. I'm not there to watch VAR, get involved and slow my game down because they want to, magnify this situation. So I just find that very interesting. I think they have to make, to your point, decisions to improve it because otherwise you're going to push, especially in this country, I think, fans out because I think people that are in this, that watch the game, they enjoy the flow of it. We have other sports that stop every time. I might be wrong. That's just my take. I think I'm probably the most un-American American because I don't like any other sport except football. But like I love football because it just flows. And when you start adding all these breaks and stuff that can add significant minutes to the game, I don't enjoy that. So I don't know what you think, but that's my take on it.
Right. We actually did a pilot. We were in the University of Minnesota, right, and all the professional referees were there,
Mm-hmm.
and we started the trial of communicating your call. So we were in the football stadium in Minnesota, and we had a little button similar to the American football referees,
Right.
and we were practicing after you make a call, communicating why we're going to review, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so it was something that we did. This was about maybe 5 years ago, before the pandemic. The problem was that a center referee in soccer is running differently, more intense than other sports.
Sure.
And what we learned from that was, when you would speak, you would sound like you just ran 70, 80
Right.
yards.
Right.
So
Right.
plus we had a lot of mixture of different cultures. So some people had heavy accents, and it wasn't as it didn't look as pretty as you would think it would be, right?
Right.
And you couldn't really understand some of it. And obviously you have to have words that are collective and everybody uses the same terminology. So when we did it, we didn't have that, but it was something that was practiced and thought about. But it wasn't accepted through, because it has to go through FIFA because they're the governing body. So it wasn't accepted because then you'd have to go into the whole thing of what language would you use. Obviously, the language that is in that country. But then when you get to the FIFA tournaments, you have teams from all over the world. What language would you use? Would you have to do it
Right.
in both languages?
That's a fair point.
You know what I mean? So
That is
it
definitely a point.
becomes a whole nother thing,
Another
um,
box.
another box. And then in the stadium, when you replay the situation, you have to decide which camera angle. And if that camera angle that they choose is the one that is for the home team, that tells you that answer that they want to hear, then you have the whole atmosphere and people booing and people throwing stuff and people being aggressive. And now you have a whole nother issue. So
Right.
um, in soccer, I think it's a little bit difficult. It'd have to be something where, and I agree with you, I've been to MLS games and nobody knows what's going on. And I'm the only one that knows what's going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I've been
Yeah.
there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I understand the confusion that it causes when you're a spectator on the field, and I think that needs to get better as well. And I think certain leagues can make it better, where it's being reviewed for certain things, and it can be a PA announcement. It's being
Sure.
reviewed for possible penalty kick instead of just saying review, because
Right.
people you want as many people to be packed in that stadium,
Right.
and it doesn't specifically have to be soccer specific people. You want people that have nothing to do with the sport to come and promote the sport and come, and you're invited, and then you know what's going on. But there is a disconnect there.
Yeah. Well, again, they want to be a part of the experience. When you're sitting there and you don't know what's happening, you're not a part of the experience. You don't know what's happening. So then you're going to probably have people that are pushing out going, and I think the point that you made about like NFL is good because, yeah, they press that button, they let everybody know, hey, we're checking X, or there's a challenge on the play of X. So everybody knows immediately what's happening. And then you're like, okay, we can wait and figure it out. But like with this, you're just sitting there going, how long is this going to take? When is it going to end? Do I have time to go get a beer? Do I go to the bathroom? What do I do? Because you're just sitting there, you're waiting for it. So I just find that very interesting, but it's a good point. But I actually have to get ready to leave. But I think we should do another podcast. I think it'd be great to kind of, I have more points that I didn't even get to, and I think it'd be great to kind of, keep this discussion going because I think this is almost invaluable. I mean, I learned a lot today from this. So I'm sure there's people that are going to learn thousands% more. And I think it just helps educate people in the process of what you have to go through as a referee, what referees go through, what the process looks like, what VAR looks like. And I think the insight you have is phenomenal. So I would love to do that if you're open to it and just kind of keep this conversation going where we can help educate more people and help them make better decisions in the long run, at least with football and the outcomes of them.
Well, Kyle, I really want to thank you. To me, refereeing and soccer is my passion, and it's been my life's work to be able to train and mentor referees. And to me, even though it's small, it makes a difference in the whole impact, in my opinion. So, anytime you want me to come on, I think it's great for people to just be aware of what's going on, and your listeners to have a different perspective.
Right?
So I really appreciate you allowing me to be on and giving me this platform.
You the man, Juan. So let's figure this out, and we'll make another time in the near future to reconnect because I got a bunch more stuff I would love to kind of pick your brain on and open that keep the wormhole open. So let's have fun with that. So I appreciate your time, bro, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Kyle. Take care.